the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that.
Maybe about a week ago because we felt like, hey, there's probably no better place to be quarantined for a little bit than in the middle of nowhere.
Definitely.
As you probably well know, I would imagine. But anyway, thanks so much for doing this with me. I really do appreciate it. I've been following your work for a long time, and it's funny. There's a lot of night sky photography out there, and there's a lot of people that are very good at it. But I think one of the reasons that I thought, hey, Yuri would make a fantastic guest is the fact that not only are you one of the best out there as far as, night sky photography, but like you're an actual astronomer. I mean, you're an actual scientist, and not many of us can say that.
Yeah, that's a kind of rare combination, I would say. So, yeah, it doesn't happen often.
Right. So it's very coincidental, I think, and maybe even cosmic, if I can say, that, I'm talking to you on basically a new moon. I know it was last night, but, still quite good conditions for viewing the night sky, on a podcast in which I'm talking to a guy who views the night sky for a living.
Oh, you're doing this for a living, right? So you're professional in this sense, right?
I'm not a professional night sky photographer. I'm a professional photographer. And, Milky Way, although, you mentioned that Milky Way is kind of what got me into photography to begin with. I don't know, maybe like 5-ish or so years ago, I witnessed the first Milky Way photo that I had seen. And I suppose maybe it was around maybe 5 or so years ago to where it really started to become popular and cameras really started having that capability. But, I saw one of these photos and I just thought to myself, holy shit, what is that? Like, I have to do this. I have to attempt to do that. And then ever since, all manners of photography have really caught me. But that's what got me into the field in general.
I see, yeah. Yeah, Milky Way photography is quite exciting, right? So it's first of all, it's something unique. Not like everybody is doing this, because normally when people talk about photography, it's like a fashion, a product, anything like landscape photography. But Milky Way is something always unique. And for me, it was kind of natural transition. So I'm a professional astronomer in the first place. So I studied astronomy in university, then I went to the observatory. So I work as a professional astronomer. But at the same time, I take this advantage of being under the night sky all the time, practically. So I said, why not? I mean, I had this passion for taking pictures for a long time, even starting with film cameras. And I've been an amateur astronomer for like many, many years. So for me, it was a natural transition. Like being an amateur astronomer, then I transitioned to professional astronomer. And then I suddenly, when digital cameras appeared, I stopped, okay, let's take a digital camera and I will stop taking pictures.
Yeah. I suppose it's kind of similar to like if you're someone who travels a lot, and then eventually you sort of pick up a camera and you say, hey, I should document this, and then all of a sudden you're like a travel photographer. But the travel kind of strikes a lot of people prior to the photography, and it's sort of like that's what happened. You were enamored, I guess, by space first, and then you said, hey, I should take a picture of this stuff, right?
Yeah, it was kind of probably the first was the curiosity about space. So I used to have like a small telescope. I was watching celestial objects like some galaxies, planets, clusters. And then at some point, it was like back in the 90s when it just picked up my first film camera. The film camera I attempted just to take first pictures of the night sky with the film. And then in the beginning of 2000s when the digital cameras came up, so then I switched to digital. And it was more like a hobby first, but then it's like I grew up in this hobby. It became more and more like a bigger thing for me now.
Yeah. How did you, if you don't mind me asking, like how did you become an astronomer? Like I assume maybe when you were a kid, something must have grasped you, on some night or something. Because feel like that's how it happens with most of us.
It's like a combination of things. Like when I was a kid, I was just walking, outside of the house, watching this beautiful twilight, colors and the moon and the Venus, like the first object from the sky I could recognize. And then I just started to learn through the books. I was reading some books about astronomy and was watching some science fiction, stuff like this. And then at some point when decision had to be taken where to go to university, I decided, I want to be an astronomer. So that was my kind of thing. So first of all, it was like a amateur astronomer. I just wanted to witness the beauty of the sky, and then, like being a professional, just to understand actually what's happening for real, just to learn physics of the objects, physics of galaxies. And so that was my, but the spark was, of course, just, being a child watching the beautiful sky.
Yeah. So when you were a kid, were you just like obsessed? I mean, were you that kid in the neighborhood that was just always kind of, nerding out over these objects in the sky, and like other kids were kind of less interested? Was it one of those kind of things?
No, I don't think so. I was kind of like a normal guy, just we had plenty of stuff to do. Astronomy was just a passion, but it was not like the only thing in my childhood. No, not at all. So it just was just a very kind of interesting hobby for me, but it was just one of the things. So I've never been like, nerd, as you say, like astronomical nerd.
Right. Well, I have, and that was the reason why I was asking, is because I find myself in these situations where, especially like when we come up to Maine, which is this location is one that my wife's family has been, coming here like year after year since forever. And so, when I eventually started coming up here, I suppose like 10 or so years ago, I seem to always be the person that was like the most passionate about, like, let's go outside and let's go take a look because it's a new moon. And, and, other people were like, they were into it. They thought, okay, that's cool. But you could tell that it was less so. Like they were kind of like, all right, let's go follow this crazy guy and let's, we'll look at the Big Dipper or whatever it is that he wants to go, look at. So for me, it was very much a nerdy thing.
Yeah, I was more like a bit more relaxed about it. So I liked it a lot, but not to the like degree of nerdness.
Right. So when you decided that you wanted to be, like an astronomer for school, I mean, did you have like a backup? Was there some sort of, or it was just you just knew that that's what you wanted to go for?
Well, there was no backup. It was a decision. I took a decision, and I just I had a goal just in front of me, and I said, okay, I'm going to university to study astronomy. That was my goal, and I managed to get into university. Yeah, that's how it went. And I didn't have any doubts about this. I mean, I've been always kind of focused on this kind of things. So yeah, for me, it was an easy way to take a decision. So I didn't have any second thoughts like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now?
Right. And your parents were on board as well, because I know how sometimes that can change things.
They've been always quite supportive with me. They said, okay, this is your life path, this is a choice, and then it's kind of, you decide what to do. If you fail, it's your fault, just do your best.
Right.
No, they were extremely encouraging, so I'm really grateful to them,
Right. So I suppose, I mean, you must miss your family, and for those of us who are listening, I mean, you're in the Atacama Desert, correct? It's like one of the best places in the world.
Normally, yes, but not now. Unfortunately, I mean, given all this virus situation, unfortunately, we are all under quarantine right now at the moment.
Right.
And unfortunately, all big professional observatories in Chile, they're closed. They've been closed since end of March.
Wow.
So essentially, all professional astronomers, we are just, we are in our houses now. So we still do some remote work, like working on documentations, like instrumentation manuals, stuff like that, doing science, like writing papers. But we do not go to the observatory anymore. We just wait until, situation improves, and only then we can just, come back to normality in a way.
Wow.
So unfortunately.
So the observatory, are there a lot of people that are typically at the observatory at once, or what does that look like day to day?
Day to day, we always have like several teams of people. Now, first of all, it's like the engineers who support all instrumentation. To make the telescope run, we need engineers. And these guys that take care on the daily basis of all instrumentation, the hardware, the domes, all infrastructure. And then in the next layer, there are astronomers. So people who actually, the scientists who use the telescopes and the instrumentation to observe the universe, and galaxies and stars and so on. So we always work like a team. So the engineers prepare for us telescope for the night, and then in the beginning of the night we just take over and just go on the sky, just start to observe the objects. So that's how we do. So yeah, normally it's like a tens of people. Depends on observatories are different. There are like a big observatories, small observatories. A number of people on the mountain at the given time could be like from few tens of people to a few hundreds of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the reason I was asking is because I think in my head, and probably in most people that are not super familiar with like what you do and what an observatory might look like, is they might think, this would be the last place that you would assume would need to worry about this or be quarantined, because you figure, hey, you're sort of in the middle of nowhere, like studying space,
Yes, that's an excellent question, by the way, because that's what most of people think. You're totally right. But the problem is, we astronomers, engineers, we do not live on the mountain because it's extreme conditions. So you think about the observatory, it's like another planet. So we are far away in the desert. I mean, driving distance, it's like a few hours normally from the nearby city. So the conditions are pretty harsh. It's extremely low humidity, between like a 5 and 10%. So it's really, your skin get damaged. So your air is extremely dry. So it's not healthy environment to stay for a long time. So this is why we have extremely strict safety regulations about the working conditions in the observatory. So this is why all people who go to the observatory, we usually would never stay more than like 10 days or 14 days, something like this. Okay, so we live like a normal people in the cities. And this is the problem now. So while you're at the observatory, yes, you're kind of safe, but at some point you have to go back to your city, and which means you have to take a transportation, like a public transport, like a bus, you have to take a plane. For example, I live in Santiago, in the capital of Chile, but I fly like every other week. I fly to the town which is close to the desert, and then we drive to the observatory. So which means for us, we still have to take all this risk of traveling, socializing with people.
Right.
And that's it. And there you go. So we cannot take this risk anymore. This is why it's a very hard decision was taken to close down the observatories just for the safety reasons.
Yeah, I never really knew that. So it's essentially, it's not so much that the activity of viewing the night sky at the observatory is the issue, so much as it's the fact that because you can only stay there temporarily, you're constantly,
right.
The logistics of travel is sort of what dictates the decision.
Exactly, because most of I'm talking about ground-based observatories, so the telescopes which stay on the ground, not the space observatories. So the ground-based telescopes, we are not in space. In space, yeah, like, the space station, the astronauts, they fly for like a half a year, maybe they can stay there without, and the same like in Antarctica. When you go to Antarctica base, you can stay up to like a 6 month, and you're completely self-contained environment. You just, but the modern ground-based observatories on the continents and the islands, they're not designed like this. So we still need like a turnaround of people, like who work in shifts, and that's the issue.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had no idea. I mean, 5 to 10% humidity. I don't know if I've ever even been in a place that's that way. I lived in Arizona for a couple of years, and the humidity is obviously very low there, but I don't remember anything close to 5 to 10% as far as I can remember.
5 to 10, I think it's not too bad. For example, there are places here in Chile where the humidity is less than 1%. So like, for example, famous ALMA project, it's a set of radio telescopes in altitude about 17,000 feet. So those telescopes, this is the science. I mean, for radio astronomy, we need extremely low humidity because, the humidity absorbs the radio waves on the short radio waves. So this is why we need to go as high as possible to be as dry as possible. Our observatory, like a 5-10%, sometimes it goes up to like a 20-30%, depends on the weather, of course. But yeah, it's pretty dry, I would say.
Yeah. So you can feel that, like you said, it just would chap lips and
absolutely. Like, you stay a couple of, it depends on, of course, it's personal experience as well. But usually, normally, like if you stay a couple of days, you already feel your skin like getting so dry, your lips, and so you really need to moisturize everything. So, yeah, it's pretty harsh.
Right. And how often do you, I mean, you know, when we're in a normal society, how often do you typically go back and forth, and how long are you there when you're there?
Normally, I go like a few times a month. It really depends. I don't have a strict schedule where I have to be there every single week. No, I go only when the observations needed to be done. So it's like a dynamic scheduling throughout the year. So sometimes I go like for a few nights. Sometimes I can go for up to a week or something like this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess, you know, and this is for me and for others as well. I understand that astronomy is the studying of space and that. I mean, I get that, but I guess one thing that I'm really curious about is what do you actually do? You know, what does a day in the life of Yuri Beletsky look like? And what are you sort of hoping to accomplish, you know, at work?
For example, one of the common tasks which we do at the observatory. So we do we perform observations. So which means in the beginning of the night, like actually at the sunset, well, we drive up to the mountain where the telescopes are located. Then we just, you know, there is a so-called control room. It's like, it looks like, you know, normal room full of computers and other equipment. So where we sit with a partner of mine who is like a telescope, it's called telescope operator. There's a second person. Usually we're like a team of two people. One person what we call drives the telescopes. He operates the telescopes. And the second person, like astronomer, who actually use the instrumentation now. So with it, how it looks, for example, if you want to point to any object in the galaxy, so we tell to our telescope operator, say, okay, could you please point to this galaxy? And then he drives the telescope, because telescopes is a complicated machine. Like you have to do lots of setups, control the shape of the primary mirror, control lots of subsystems. It's the whole, you know, completely different job. So once the telescope is already on the object, and then we're ready to do observations, then I, as an astronomer, engage the instrumentation. For example, if you want to take a picture of a galaxy, we just, you know, we have a big cameras, like infrared cameras, optical cameras. We just point a camera on the object and start taking pictures. And then what we do, we look at the quality control on the fly. We see how the observations are going. So whether we're getting this, we're measuring the signal coming from the galaxy and see whether we get enough signal. We take a decision about the exposure times. And this is like typically the sequence what we do. And we, for the whole night, we have a list of objects to observe. It's not just sometimes it could be like a one galaxy, for example, if the galaxy is extremely faint, like 1 billion of light years away. So we might spend just a full night just on one object.
Right.
And sometimes we can observe like every other minute. Like for example, if we do like a spectroscopy of stars, so we have like hundreds of stars to observe during the night. So that's what we do, like at the point on every single star from the list and just take a spectra, you know, and then we can study like a velocity of stars, how the stars move in space. We can measure chemical composition to determine, like, you know, whether the star is old or young, or what's going on inside a star. Study the evolution of stars, or study like streams of galaxies, you know, anything like that. So we are basically performing those observations, you know, just in consistent manner. Of course, our goal is to get the data, and then we either use, depends on the program. It's sometimes when you observe for yourself, you do your own science with this object, this data, or we send the data to astronomers, like in our case in the United States, like to Harvard, to Princeton, to Arizona, to other astronomers who are asking us to perform those observations.
Oh, I see. So a lot of what you do is there may be another scientist elsewhere that has some sort of a, I don't know, a project or maybe a theory or something that they're working on, and essentially they say, well, let's commission, you know, Yuri and you know, some of the people over at that particular observatory to do all the integration and capture that data to then send off to that other team.
Yeah, it's pretty much like this. Again, the system works like we have a system in science. It's called proposal system. So before you get any observing time, you have to justify the use of the telescope time, because there's a huge competition in the world. You know, there are tons of astronomers, thousands of astronomers who need this particular telescope for their particular science. So how to decide who will get the time? So there's like a scientific committee which gets together like twice a year. They get all these so-called proposals, which is essentially like a written couple of pages of text and graphs, where the jury members, let's call them jury, they look carefully and they evaluate those proposals, and they decide on the scientific merit which proposal will be a bit more important, a bit less important, and so on. So they build like a system of like a grades. So, and the proposals which are in the highest they were given the highest grade, though they go through, and those proposals will be given time. Again, it's all about the money too. I mean, observations are pretty expensive thing.
I would imagine. Yeah.
Just give you just a reference point. For example, on our telescopes, I work on 6.5 meter telescopes. The cost of the observing night would be about $60,000
per night.
The cost per night.
Yeah, it's like operating like a giant, cruise ship or something like that.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. It's a complex system, but in a way, just once you learn things, it's becoming easier and easier. Of course,
yeah.
It's not too complicated.
Yeah.
And again, the telescope operators, sometimes these are people who have very different backgrounds. So they're not astronomers. They can be just either engineers or a variety of other professions you can imagine. Just to give you an example, just for fun, for instance, in the past, I used to work first at the European Southern Observatory and the VLT, the Very Large Telescope. And we used to have a telescope operator who was a former pilot of LAN Chile. It was the airline, Chilean airline. He used to fly these big Boeing 777 Boeings. He was a captain on Boeing plane. Mm-hmm. And then at some point he decided, okay, I just want to change my life. I want to switch to do something else. And he went to the observatory and he became a telescope operator. And I asked him a question, like during one of the nights we were observing together, and asked him, I'm curious, like what's the difference between flying a big Boeing as a captain and driving a telescope? He said, well, they're pretty much, technically speaking, they're comparable. The only difference is the cost of the mistake.
Right.
that's how it goes.
Yeah, very true. And sounds like the brain of a scientist to make a joke like that as well.
Yeah, probably. Well, that was true. I don't know.
Yeah. So you must, I mean, I have to imagine that I don't, how long have you been actually, working at observatories at this point for?
Well, professionally, it's, from 2006, from the 14 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. Does it still get you, like when you walk in there, is it still exciting? Because I have to imagine that, like going to a place like that and knowing just this powerful device that you have that can just capture things that are just, billions of light years away. Like that's gotta feel cool, no matter how long you've done it, I would think.
Absolutely, no doubt about this. Because I mean, the beauty of astronomy, like every time you go up there, just you have no idea what you're gonna find out. I mean, it's universe. We're constantly learning something new about this. There are new, like a supernova going on. Like we're measuring the velocity of the galaxies. We just observe asteroids, other things. There's something always exciting going on, and you have no idea what's going to be happening next night. That's the beauty of astronomy. That's why, like fundamental science, we're always trying to learn something. So I can tell you, this job is definitely not a boring job for sure.
Right. Probably difficult though. I can't. Most laymen's probably are not cut out for this. I assume you have to be a pretty brilliant person to do most of what you guys do.
Well, yeah, it's not an easy job. First of all, physically, of course, it's challenging because we work at night. Like, that's given. Like, we don't really work during the daytime. Yeah, we work at night, so it's especially like on winter nights, they're long. It might be a bit more difficult. Plus, you also have to, you have to know a lot of things as well. Physics, astronomy. You have to be a scientist. But at the end of the day, it's still, it's challenging, but it's exciting at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a particular thing that you're working on now that you're most excited about, like a particular photo or something? I don't know.
Well, you mean science-wise at the observatory, right? Or
yeah, at the observatory. Is there something that you're like super? Or I mean, hey, if you've got something else that you're working on personally, I'm all ears as well.
Well, the observatory is going on again. Unfortunately, observatories are closed now. We don't have any running activities right now. But at the same time, I'm just taking this time, first of all, to dedicate to my hobby. So I'm just reprocessing some images or processing some images which I took like well before, because I've been traveling quite a bit in the past few months, and now I have a chance finally to sit down, look at the data, and just because that's the biggest challenge, right? So when you take images, you're excited, that's the best image you took, then you come back home, and then you've been always getting busy with something else,
right?
Job or other stuff, and then you piling up your data like it's endless. So now it's kind of a good time to come back, take a look, and just carefully start reducing your processing your data.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that too, because so one of my guests that I had on a few weeks ago, we were talking about the difference between, acquiring an image and then editing it, like immediately versus acquiring an image and then maybe just letting it sit, maybe kind of almost forgetting about it for a while, and then eventually maybe coming back and working on it later. Do you have a particular preference? Like, would you rather kind of edit it while it's fresh in your mind and you're excited about it, or would you almost rather, because the way that I look at it is when you edit fresh, it's more emotional. You're more like excited about it. But when you edit maybe a month from after you took it, it's less emotional, but it's much more like, I guess, matter of fact. It's easier to be objective about that image because you're not quite as, you're not on that high, let's say, that you were on, the night that you took it or something.
Well, it's kind of a bit of a both. I would say it depends. The answer will be it depends, because in astronomy, when I take astronomical picture, many of my images which I take, they kind of go online almost instantly, because in astronomy, we are always talking about some kind of celestial phenomena which are happening right now. Okay, so it took some picture, for example, let's say like a meteor shower. It happened during the night. So you have to make sure that you publish this image as soon as possible, because it has the highest value, like for the whole society. Because, for example, next day everybody expecting, oh, what happened last night? So you really kind of want this to be published as soon as possible, just to give people a complete picture. So in this case, it's more like a journalism. So your image might not be super perfect, but you will be the first to release it to people, and then you will be known by that. So that's the thing. That's kind of urgency, which not like your deadline, but you're pushing yourself because you really want to be like, giving people a picture as fast as possible. It's not about even competition. Like, for example, I am extremely easygoing person. I don't really compete with anybody because I do just what I love. And in my case, my motivation would be just to give people my result as fast as possible. But when we are talking about more like artistic photography, I would actually prefer to wait a little bit. So I come back home, because for me, I just need, to change the mood first, just come back. And then, especially when I do image processing, I wish I would do it more often, but I call it to leave my processed image for cooking. Cooking, I mean, like a waiting. I process it let's say, instantly, like I did some processing. I put it away for a day, for 2, and then I come back again and say, oh my gosh, it's so bad, like it's not doing it. Because I did this mistake so many times when I process the image and then publish it like on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, then come back next morning like, oh my gosh, it's so bad. So
yeah,
I would say,
that's funny.
Again, if we are talking about some urgent astronomical phenomena which happen on the sky, and you really want to give it to people as fast as possible, yes, that's almost like an instant processing. But for more artistic images, like a lens, beautiful like a result, I would say probably I would wait a little bit. Yeah.
Do you feel like an affinity, one way or another? Like, do you enjoy sort of the like you called it, a journalistic kind of approach? Do you enjoy sort of getting it out quickly, or do you, and I'm just asking personally, I understand that one is sort of your job and the other is your personal interest. But, where do you kind of like to be? Like, do you enjoy the editing process and sort of the manipulation of imagery?
I do. And again, it's a little bit different. So when I process like a quickly and release the image, I mean, I enjoy it as well. And then I also enjoy when I have more time and more relaxed, I can spend like hours just processing one image. Yes, I enjoy it too. So for me, I would say, besides being like a professional astronomer, I also teach astrophotography and nightscape photography. So I have online courses on this, workshops. So I teach people how to do this. And I always tell to people like image processing is essential part of your final result. So especially in landscape photography, it's probably much easier. I mean, you make a click. Yeah, of course, it's complicated. It's not that easy. But if you compare it to nightscape photography, we have so many challenges in nightscape photography. We are always lacking light. We have noise issues. We have the sky is also moving, like our exposure times, like in landscape photography, we make a click, perfect. Then you're
done. Yeah.
Done. Okay, no, not like that, but it's almost done. So you go back to Photoshop now and start play. In astrophotography, the night sky is moving. If you have like exposure time, like at 20, 30 seconds, now you have to see like how the stars are moving, so they're not in point anymore. Okay, there's like multiple layers of complications. So that's why people sometimes ask, like, why can't you publish like every single day, like, landscape guys do? I say, it's impossible. You can actually you can do this, but your result will be kind of, flaky. Quality will not be there. So.
Yeah. And certainly if you have a family and friends, you can basically forget about spending any time with them because it's all you're going to be doing all day.
Of course, you always have to find a balance. As I said, like you can be a little bit nerdy about this, but my biggest advice to people, just don't let this hobby consume you like a 200%. Just live your normal life. The sky is there. The galaxy the Milky Way will be for like billions of years. So just enjoy your life, because sometimes when people are too focused on their hobby, they start to miss so many things around them.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I think that the reason that kind of thing does happen with people is because of the pressure of like photography on social media is a big one. I mean, and there's not, it's the astrophotography community is not enormous, but it is fairly accessible, I think, to people that haven't quite gotten there yet. I mean, the idea that you can buy, like a star tracker now for like a couple $100, and if you've got a tracker, well, now you don't really need that great of a camera. And you maybe don't even really need that great of a lens because the tracker takes care of so much of that. So you have this, what is now becoming a very like accessible thing. And it's not that difficult, I guess, to go from basically knowing nothing about it to actually taking like half decent photos, I think. And so I think that, when you see all of these different, photographers on Instagram with these amazing photos, people are constantly sort of putting pressure on themselves to get out there and do it as much as they possibly can.
Oh, you're absolutely right. So first of all, I want to tell you, like, in order to start astrophotography, these days, you don't even need a digital camera. I mean, like, for example, your cell phone. Now, the modern new generation of cell phones, they're absolutely incredible. I've been testing, like, recently I was published, like, images from Xiaomi Mi Note 10. It's absolutely incredible. The quality of new smartphones, they are now approaching to the level of digital cameras.
Yeah.
I mean, DSLR, so mirrorless. I mean, we are not there yet, but we are getting much closer. So that's what I'm saying. To start the hobby, you really have to just need a passion and desire to go outside and just take a picture. But this brings me to another question about the social media, how it impacts you, because there's a huge thing in social media, and especially when it comes to nightscape pictures, is so-called like composite images or digital art.
Yep.
It's a huge discussion. Like
huge discussion.
Huge discussion. I'm pretty sure you were going to ask me this question anyway. Digital art and composites, but that's again that. They influence a lot, and many people, when they look at Instagram, for example, or Facebook, they see this beautiful, like incredible space pictures plus ground. They see many people like believe it's real.
I know.
And they try to push their limits and get there and so on. But yeah, well.
Yeah.
But my point is, as I said, you don't have to be like confused or deceived by those images. Like you just have to understand how they obtained. And I always tell to people when they ask me about digital art, because some people, like a real nightscape photographers, they say, okay, digital art is a crime, never should be done. Composites, never, so on. Look, my approach is very simple. I said, I'm totally fine with any kind of art, anything. Digital art, no problem. You want to put the moon just, in front of the Milky Way and then snap somewhere in front of New York City, no problem, do it.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is, please disclose what you've done. Like, for example, in the description, just write a couple of words. Like, it's a composite image. There's nothing wrong about this. So it's a composite image, like, Milky Way was taken somewhere in Atacama Desert, and this is like a Philadelphia steps on Rocky Balboa and the Milky Way above. No problem.
Right.
I mean, you can do it. Nobody can forbid you to do it. But please just disclose. It will be honest, first of all, and then people will gain respect to you, because you're honestly saying it's digital art, no issues. And I have many friends on Instagram and Facebook who are beautiful, amazing digital artists. I love their work. And essentially, it's basically like, for many of those people, I can buy their work and put it on my wall because I love them. I know it's not real. It's not. But I mean, lots of pretty much all paintings, they're not real.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're not trying to pretend and say, oh, look, this is like, for example, a snapshot with my cell phone, and look at this, or you say it's a snapshot with my digital camera, like a single image, I don't see any problems. I'm totally fine with that.
It's interesting that it is such a hot topic and people do get so upset like one way or another. And I kind of wonder, like, what does that actually stem from? I think that part of it must be, like, to your point about the scientific community. Like, I could see why a lot of people in the scientific community would look at compositing and think this is bullshit or whatever, because it's not real, and they've devoted their existence essentially to making something as real and as scientific as possible. So I could understand their frustration. And then, going on the other end, the artists, it's like, to them, it's like they make an image and people really like it. And it's like, who's to say, oh, well, don't ever do that again. It's if people like it, and what is the cost of doing that? Like, I think that if you inspire somebody by showing them this ridiculous composite that would never, ever happen, if you inspire that person to maybe get into that field, or, I don't know, pursue something that maybe they otherwise wouldn't have pursued, then that's still probably a win, because you've impacted somebody on a level to want to do that. But on the other hand, I could see how maybe, like, to some respects, I think, the damage has been done, so to speak, because I think a lot of people, the people that are not really into astrophotography that see composites, I don't even know how much they're paying attention to the explanation as to how that image was obtained. I think they just kind of think, that's amazing, I should go to that place so I can see something like that, And I was probably one of those people before I got into photography and realized every great image I've ever seen is a composite now, So I could definitely see, both sides of this.
Yeah, me too. The thing is, I would suggest just to avoid extremes. Some people are getting really like, taking like too partisan about it. It's either it should be either like, non-processed raw image, like just no processing in Photoshop and publish it. This is real photography. Somebody goes like a full digital art and just say, okay, this is the only thing. No, the truth is always in the middle. And as I said, photography is always the way just to express yourself. I mean, there are several, I would say, I don't know, categories of photography. There's scientific photography, there's documentary photography, there's things which are, like, composites are forbidden, okay? For example, when I take image for professional observatories, we use them in public, in releases and scientific papers. Of course, they have to be 100% scientifically correct.
Right.
So we cannot simply just teach the sky from it. But what I'm saying, my point is, especially when it comes to amateur photography or like the professional photographers, like maybe like in your case, you're professional, you make living out of photography. I can understand frustration. For example, when you go outside and you take pictures of the night sky and you get some kind of nice result, it's okay. You publish on the social media, you get like 100 likes. But then there is a guy next door. He didn't even go outside. For example, he took a picture of his house. He took like another image from professional observatory, just stitched them together, made it beautiful, published, and he got like 10,000 likes.
Right.
And then and people say like, what the hell is going on? Like, I was working hard. I went into I spent hours driving to the dark side. I was taking this beautiful picture and I got like almost nothing, no likes. And then the other guy, he did basically nothing. He did painted on this Photoshop and he got like 10,000 likes. This is the attitude I see a lot.
Right.
And I would try to, and also there's a business side of this because it's all about sales. When you try to sell your pictures, of course, when it's digital art, it's beautifully manipulated. Of course, it's much easier to sell and much easier to appeal to general public, right? So if you're like trying to sell picture, which is like from your point of view, close to reality, and of course, it doesn't have this boosted saturation, stuff like that.
Right.
So general public, this picture has enormous value for you because it's a part of your experience. You went outside, you were under the stars, you took this picture, you wanted to tell a story. But for most of people, when they just look at the picture, they don't know a story behind. They just say, oh, it's okay, fine. And they will never buy it. They will buy something which is digitally processed. And this is the problem. Most of people who have this negative reaction about digital art, these honest guys who just honestly go on a dark sky trying to take pictures, and they are not, successful in selling, or their income is not as great as they want. And I totally understand this part of the game. But again, you just have to, we are living in the real world, right? So there is a free market. So if you can sell stuff like this, people do it. And you just, from my point of view, again, I'm not like I'm making my 100% of my living out of this photography. Probably people say, oh, for you it's easy to discuss. But I say, look, that's your niche. You have to develop your business. If you don't feel like it's your business, you probably should not be doing this business. Or you have to find a way how to make it work. That's my kind of. Yeah,
it's a good point. I mean, and to tell you the truth, like I've been that person where I thought, I'm that person all the time where, I see, I see some other work, or I see some other photo on Instagram, and yeah, I've been that guy where I was frustrated because I thought, man, I spent, so much time. A great example. One of the things that I do, outside of like nightscape stuff is I'll do, time lapses. I'm very big into time lapses. I've had a number of time lapse photographers, on my podcast as well. And I'm reminded of something that my friend, Kevin Green, told me recently. This idea that like you've spent 10 hours maybe making this time lapse, editing it, rendering it. I mean, even the render might take hours depending upon your computer, and then you put it up on like Instagram, and it's like it's just what I mean. They're just going like that, and it's like it's painful. And I mean, I think we all know it. I don't think people are crying tears about it, but people know about this, and it does stink, and it's really rough out there, I think, for people that spend that much time on something, and then they, for at least a moment, they have this idea that, okay, this could be my big chance, this could be my viral photo, or my viral image or time lapse or whatever, and 99.9% of the time it's just not going to happen. And it may not even have anything to do with how good or bad your work is. It's just because the way that virality seems to be is so it's just so random much of the time.
I totally agree. And I would say personally, when I go outside of the pictures, first of all, I never think about this epicness of the images. So I never think, oh, this is going to be an epic image, it's going to go viral. I never think about this, because for me, my motivation is just I want to enjoy the night sky. I want to enjoy the experience. And then if something comes up, if, for example, if I take an image and then suddenly it gets popular, it's fine. I don't really mind. But it's never my kind of mindset to go outside to take the most epic picture. My mindset is just to go outside to enjoy the nature. And then the picture is the secondary step. Okay, that's probably the difference. That I always trying to enjoy the nature, and I always trying to first to get something, and then we'll see if it flies or not. By the way, a few of my viral images, actually I didn't like them. I thought they were just totally okay. But then people, for some reason, like they just click like this and like, wow, just, I don't know, for me, just, it's so bizarre, this viral thing. And you never know. Sometimes, some silly stuff gets viral. Just,
that's funny. I have a similar experience where I'll have certain things that I'll do where I'll think this is mediocre, and I'm not even sure why I'm putting it up on the internet, because it's just not very good. And then every once in a while, those will get more attention, and I'll almost think, if I don't want this image to be the well-liked image, because to me that's lesser than what my usual work might be. And it's this funny predicament where you're sort of pleased that, well, hey, I'm glad all these people like it, but at the same time you're like, well, I wish they could have liked this other one that's was actually good.
Yeah, I know, definitely. So my suggestion to people, when it again comes back to those coming back to composites and digital art and other things like this. So what I would suggest to people, my personal opinion about this, I think you should just be cool about it. Just forget it. Forget the topic. Just focus on the job you do. Focus on your own photography. Just do it at the best as you can. And then trust me, like I'm telling you, I've never had a goal like to get a huge following on any of social. Actually, I joined social media pretty late by any standards. So just do focus on your stuff. It doesn't matter that this guy, your neighbor does, some digital photography and he's super successful. It doesn't matter because you will always find your own audience. So this is how I know. We are in internet. There are billions of people in the world. There will be always people who will enjoy your work because, for example, you're honest, you're a really great storyteller, you're a really nice adventurer, you have something to share with people, or you just have a good personality and nice images. Trust me, people will come to you. And I noticed the other trend. If you start to be extremely negative about things like this, and you're always kind of going around saying, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. It's a totally negative attitude. I totally understand why it's happening, but I would say just take it easy, seriously, just focus on yourself and trust me, it will be beneficial for you. First of all, for your own a psychological health, you feel much better. And second, people will follow you. They will follow you. It's a fact. They will do it. So just focus on your hobby or focus on your, in your achievement and do it the best you can, and people will follow you. That's my biggest advice. Forget about, competition, digital art, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're definitely right, and clearly you have a very good, mindfulness quality about you, which is, I think everyone's kind of striving to be as mindful as they can. But you're right. I mean, the times that I felt, negative, which have happened. They don't happen as often, now as maybe they would have, in previous years, I suppose. But it really does seem as though less good things will happen for you when you are being negative. And it's almost as if the world kind of, hears you being negative and sort of doesn't, just sort of volleys it back to you. And the times in which I feel the most healthy and alive and mentally well, and the more, I guess, complimentary I am to other people's images, or to, being kind to other people, it does seem that in those periods of time in my life is when I get the best feedback or I get the most opportunity elsewhere. And I don't know what that is. I have no scientific basis to support anything like that. But it does feel like that. It does feel that way.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And this is why I would like to kind of encourage people who think in this way. Just to give you one example, people may say, "Oh, Yuri, it's nice for you to talk like this because your main income is not coming from this photography. You're a professional astronomer, your salary comes from another place, and it's easy for you to say this." But I say, no, guys. For example, I'm also a member of one organization. It's called TWAN. If you Google TWAN Night Sky, so this is the organization of photographers around the world who are basically the goal of the project to spread information about the beauty of the night sky. We are participating in outreach projects, and the goal of the project to show the beauty of the natural night sky. So one of the criteria of photographers who are in the loop of this organization. So we are not. It's not about digital photography, not composites. We are taking natural pictures of the night sky, and trust me, there are so many images. And this organization is pretty well known. So there are people in the organization. We have different backgrounds. We are not all astronomers. There are engineers, writers. So those people, some of them, they make income. They make a living out of nightscape photography. And those guys, they don't do any composite images. And nevertheless, they're still doing well. They sell their images. They conduct workshops. They travel around the world. So it is possible. What I'm saying is, probably if something doesn't really go well, just focus on your work. Just try to improve the skills. Try to improve, first of all, communication skills, then image processing skills. Try to find more interesting places maybe where you go. And it's possible. Again, you don't have to be a millionaire to do this hobby, or you still can make money, really good money, not just being a digital artist as many people think. So. Yeah. I said, it's the real example. Just Google TWAN, TWAN, and you will see work of those people. And I said, many people just make a living out of this hobby, or for many of them, it's a profession. It's a main income for them.
Yeah, so. That's very cool. And I'm definitely a big advocate of just having people get enjoyment out of the night sky, even prior to just photography, which is almost a whole separate component, but just appreciating it for what it is. And it's funny, I think sometimes about how many people are in the world that have never seen like a truly magnificent night sky because, you know, they live in cities, or they just, they've never had an opportunity, or maybe they don't have the money or whatever to leave where they're at and drive the 6 hours away, or, you know, or maybe they were on a trip and they were in the desert or whatever it is. And it's really interesting to me that so many people, like, I guarantee you we could find someone right now in Philadelphia that has never seen it, and we could drop them in, you know, in Maine, where I am now, where it's, you know, again, new moon, it's crystal clear out. I'm going to be shooting it later tonight. Or in the Atacama, or hundreds of other places that are just magnificent. And, you know, I feel like this person would say, I had no idea this was even possible. I had no idea this was even a thing. And it's like, you know, I wonder how many people are in that situation. I would dare to say maybe even most people have never seen anything like that.
I would say, from my experience, I would say probably it's a generation now. I mean, I can tell you, like, for instance, we at our observatory, we have astronomers coming from the United States, and there's a substantial amount of, especially young guys at the age, like, let's say below 30. So some of those people, like, they've never seen a dark sky, a real dark sky. They're coming from like big cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York. I mean, they've never seen it in their lives, and then they come like and say, "Oh, wow, this is real."
Right.
So these astronomers, they're professional astronomers who are studying astronomy now. So you can imagine now, like, people who are not engaged in astronomy, just, you know, living in the cities, and they never leave the city. Or if they leave, they go equally light polluted cities, you know,
Right.
other big like Philadelphia, you know, just Miami, whatever. They
Right.
never see the dark sky. Yeah, that's a huge problem now. Huge problem.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes I wonder, like, how much does that actually affect your psyche as well? Because there is something for me personally, and I obviously can't speak for everybody, but getting off the beaten path for me has always been very, like, invigorating for me. It's always been, I don't know, it's just good for me. I can just tell I feel very refreshed when I come back to, you know, the civilized world, so to speak. And I think that really getting under the stars is like it doesn't get any more, it just doesn't get any better than that in terms of feeling that, like, primordial feeling that, you know, the human race has seen for the majority of its existence, is just, you know, staring into the abyss, and just, you know, I think it's worth something. It's not just a cool thing. I mean, it certainly is a cool thing, but I think to define it as merely something that's just a cool thing, oh, that's cool, and now we can walk away and get about our day, I think defining it in that simplistic way is an injustice to it. I think that there's something much deeper that appeals to us on, like, a very like primordial sort of nature.
Well, definitely, you're absolutely right. And it's not just a cool factor here. I would say it's, in the medical terms, it's essential, because I see always so many people coming from the big cities, like, say, San Francisco, LA here, and those people, they're stressed during all their lives. They live in the big city. They're under constant stress, whether they realize it or not, because they are. It's the tough jobs, you know, the bankers, the managers, you know, people who are always, you know, thinking about something. They take decisions all the time. So coming under the stars, it's absolutely incredible, relaxing experience as well. People don't even realize until they get there. They come to the desert, just we go outside, they look at the stars, like, oh my gosh, so now I finally can, there's no cell phone connection, there's nothing, just the stars above you, and just, you know, your camera, and then you can finally relax and don't, you know, stop thinking about all your problems. And this is, like, amazing. People sometimes just spend a couple of nights, like, under the stars, and they say, oh my goodness, that's what I needed. I don't need any luxury hotels. I don't need any, like, a fancy things. This is the most basic and simple thing in life. You just need to be, you know, be yourself under the stars. And why under the stars? There's another explanation, because there are not so many people under the stars. Normally, when you go even like a touristic places, there are tons of people, especially these days at national parks. They're flooded with tourists from all over the world.
Yeah.
But at night, when you come at night, you are totally alone. Okay, maybe you can find a couple of other folks like you, but normally you're alone. And it's so much more relaxing experience. Nobody's bothering you. It's so much easier and so much refreshing. So it's very important.
Yeah. Yeah. And, just the history of the way that people would travel by starlight, and, all of those things that we have within us, these abilities that we have within us based on the night sky, which we don't even get to exercise anymore. We just don't, we don't need to, no one knows how to find the North Star anymore, except for, people like us. Like no one even knows how to do that,
Absolutely. It's navigation through like thousands of years. People use stars for navigating the sea or in the land, doesn't matter. But yeah, they were using that. But these days, of course, now we have all cell phones, GPS is everywhere now. It's so much different.
I have to admit that there are times when I'm trying to set up a shot, and it feels like when I do use an app, I feel like I'm kind of cheating. Like there's this little bit of like, Adam, you should be able to figure this out on your own. And then there are times when I'm like, yeah, but I want the shot to be as perfect as it can be. And so I'll use the app and, have this little moment of like, like I'm using a cheat code or something.
Well, I wouldn't say that, because my opinion is, when it comes to like just enjoying the stars, no problem. You can look around. Probably you should know some constellations, maybe some stuff. But when it comes to photography, even for me, like I'm a professional astronomer, but still, in order to predict position of the Milky Way at the given time, at the given place, you really want to align, for example, Milky Way with like a foreground elements, like a lake or some trees or some stones. You have to be extremely precise. And even being an astronomer, you can't really, especially in the place where you've never been before, you have no idea how it's going to be like, it will look like. So this is why, we are blessed now. We have these applications like a photo pills, for example, is one of the best in the market. So photo pills is essential. I use it all the time for my shots. And I don't think it's a cheating in a way. It's like this is how actually it should be done. I would say many people, I've seen so many people, they travel around the world. They spend so much money on traveling, and then suddenly they get into the place and try to take a picture, just to realize, for example, the Milky Way is not even visible tonight, like a galactic core, not just Milky Way.
Right. Yeah. Understood.
It's a wrong season. Or sometimes the people just try to take a picture of the Milky Way galactic core, let's say, in the beginning of the night while it's not visible, because the galactic core will be visible in the morning. People don't know this. They get confused. They go under the stars to this beautiful sky, no Milky Way. What happened? So it's planning, as I said, always say planning is essential. So it's always you have to be prepared for this. Just use photo pills, use other software, just plan your shot before. It will make your life so much easier, especially at night.
Do you tend to see more people interested in like landscape astrophotography, or sort of what's typical, or are you maybe starting to see people kind of graduating up to like deep sky stuff like that?
Actually, it goes both ways. For example, I belong to both communities. I came from astrophotography, where I first was taking pictures with the telescope, taking pictures of deep sky objects. And then I even built my own remote observatory in Atacama Desert. I built a telescope in a proper dome. We were controlling from 1,000 miles away from Santiago, and my observatory was in Atacama Desert. I built it, so I was taking pictures of the deep sky. But
that's cool.
I kind of got excited more about nightscape photography, and then I gradually just changed to nightscape more. So, and there are people going both ways, or you can do both things. It's totally doable. Yeah. So it's always constant move, because it's totally about your imagination, what you want. Sometimes you want more like a deep sky thing. Sometimes you want just to be under the stars and take nightscapes.
Right. Yeah. That's really interesting to hear you say that, because my own background is the exact opposite of that. And I think probably most people's, it happens to be the opposite of that, because of course, what's the easiest thing to do is to take a wide angle. You don't have to do as much. You don't have to worry about the rotation of the Earth and all that kind of stuff. But as you learn more, and as you get a little bit better, and as it becomes more, for example, I remember the first time that, you know, I started hearing about these little trackers, you know, like, and I have just a small, you know, it's just the Star Adventurer tracker, like nothing crazy. But I remember, like, you know, the first time hearing about that, it just seemed overwhelming to me. And even though looking back on it now, it's like, oh, this is the simplest thing in the world. This is totally not difficult. But, you know, just the whole, as soon as somebody says, oh, well, you need a way to like match the rotation of the Earth so that you can take a longer, it's like, I'm like, I can't. It's too much. But then you cross that bridge and you start having these realizations that, okay, I mean, maybe this is a complicated hobby, but it's not that complicated. Maybe I can kind of go down this rabbit hole a bit farther. And so, like, personally, I'm now starting to really be more fascinated by the idea of deep sky, and I think that that's typically the progression that a lot of photographers take, and they sort of get to this point of like, how do I take a big photo of, you know, a nebula or just, you know, any other galaxy. And it's just funny to me because it seems as though that's kind of how you started. You started there and, you know, went the opposite direction.
Well, still, you always have to start with basics, no matter what, you know, whether you start deep sky photography or night sky photography, you cannot jump, you know, over your head and start doing complicated things right away. It's like a starting YouTube channel. Many people just think, you know, guys like Casey Neistat, they've been always like this. No, you just have to gradually, you know, going up. You're learning things on the way. And what I'm saying, you shouldn't be afraid of this. Astrophotography is a complicated business only when if you want to make it complicated. Just you can start with something simple. Like I said, first step, cell phone.
Right.
Small digital camera. And then, you know, you can gradually going up. You can just say, okay, that's my limit right now. I want now a telescope. Sure, go on, like buy a telescope, a mount, because then you start to realize, oh, there are different systems of telescope. There are different mounts. So why this mount is more expensive than another? It's not because of just, you know, somebody wants to make more money on it. No, it's because the quality is different. For certain like type of pictures, you have to have extremely high quality and expensive mount. You cannot use a cheaper one because the equipment is getting also more complicated. You need to buy a more expensive camera, not because the camera is expensive, but because the functionality allows you to get the best of the best out of your equipment, and so on. So there's no limit in this, you know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You always just, you know, don't be afraid. Just start with the simple things, and then there is always, you know, next level of complication. You know, you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you you mentioned earlier how when you take images from the observatory, and what you typically do is, you know, it's your job, so you have to sort of send it off, and maybe you don't get the luxury of getting to edit and manipulate in the most creative way possible, or you know, coloring it the way that you'd like. Do you get opportunities to where you harvest, you can get that data yourself, and then maybe personally you take the image home and mess around with it? Is that something that you ever get a chance to do, like you know, where you get to edit creatively from some of that data that you took from the observatory?
Yeah, that's what I do. I mean, I don't have a pressure, you know, to process the images immediately. So usually, first of all, I mean, again, being at a telescope, it's actually complicated business for me to take pictures of the night sky, because when I'm at a telescope at night, my main job is, you know, doing science. I'm observing. So I cannot simply just go outside and set up my camera. You know, sometimes I can do, for example, when we run extremely long exposure time, everything is under control. Of course, I can set up the camera and take a picture, but again, I cannot go away for more than a few minutes. So that's the thing. So while I'm at the observatory, it's probably the least productive time in a way, because I don't have much of a time for taking like a landscape pictures, because my main job is very different. So normally yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think what I mean is, when you've taken a picture from the telescope at the observatory itself, do you ever take that data home with you and say, I'm going to edit a photo that we took with the actual, like the real telescope?
Science data.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Oh, okay, I see. Oh, sorry, I misunderstood.
No,
yeah,
that's
so
okay.
Normally, yeah, I mean, we never do real-time image processing, for example, of images to the level of, like, you know, publication quality. Of course, never, because usually normally we're so super busy, we don't have any time to this. So we always do some kind of, you know, just quality check on the data, but we never really have time to process them. So in a way, yeah, I mean, all these beautiful pictures, they're processed like way after we take these images. And only in extremely rare cases when you need color picture, let's say there's a phenomenon like a supernova star just exploded. You want to just release for like a public outreach department. Yes, so in this case, you can be extremely quick. You just take an image, do quick processing, and just color grading, correction, and then you send it to PR department. Yes, but it doesn't happen often, luckily for us.
Yeah, I think that would be, and I, for the record, I don't even know how I would even begin to edit something like that. I'm not even close to that ability, but I would think that would be, like, that would excite me personally to be able to say, I've got this data from a gigantic telescope out in the desert, and now I'm going to turn it into something at home. Like, I think that there's probably a lot of, night sky photographers out there that would think, oh man, that would be so much fun to do.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's what we do. Again, it's normally like in observatories. Astronomers, you will be surprised, probably most of, I would say probably 90% of astronomers, they are not into night sky photography at all. So many of professional astronomers, they don't even know the night sky properly. It's more like modern astronomy has become more like a physics. You think about the numbers, the processes, but you don't really see the night sky in a way. And so this is why in most of professional observatories, the data which is taken by astronomers, it's not processed by those astronomers who took the data. The data goes normally to archive, and then, for example, PR department just goes into the archive and say, okay, so let's take a look what we have here. Oh, that's the galaxy. Let's take the galaxy. They have their own people who experience in data processing, data reduction, and image processing. So those guys who are not even astronomers, it's more like photographers in a way, or digital analysts. They take the data, process the data, make a color picture, and publish it on the web. So I would say almost 100% of cases, those images you see from professional observatories, they were not processed by astronomers. They're processed by photographers, engineers, or software engineers.
Yeah, that's interesting. By the way, I was going to ask you, is there any particular observation that you've been making or studying, recently, obviously talking about prior to the whole quarantine, but anything in particular that you've been studying that you find to be very interesting currently?
Well, we are doing various projects in the galaxy. For example, I was involved in projects studying the brown dwarfs. It's like very small stars, like objects which are basically not even stars. They have masses between like a Jupiter and solar mass. So we are trying to study the evolution of those objects. So this is why they're extremely faint objects. We can see them normally best in the infrared because they're extremely cool objects. They're very cold. The temperature is like less than 1,000 Kelvin. So they emit most of their radiation in the infrared. So in a way, we are trying to peer into the dust, and then we suddenly see something. It's like owls, which see in infrared. So if you look at the optical in the night sky, we see like a black patch of the night sky. But if you use the infrared camera, we suddenly can see through the dust. And then this is how we study those very cold objects.
Yeah.
And this is probably one of the most exciting aspects of astronomy when we're trying to see something which is like invisible for most of us. Like for example, an optical telescope, if you put an eyepiece and just look at the sky. So we do not see infrared. We will see like a nothing. Even with the biggest telescope on the planet, we will see nothing, like a black patch. But if you just put infrared camera in the same place, then you will start seeing through the dust. And this is the exciting thing. That's what we do.
Yeah. I would imagine it's got to feel good when you you've probably discovered things, I would imagine. Is that safe to say that there are things that Yuri Beletsky has essentially discovered in the night sky?
Well, in a way, like yes and no. It's not like a classical way we discover things all the time. So basically, all science, every single step of science, we discover something new. Every scientific paper which we write, scientific paper is like a pinnacle of his research. When you do some research, when you get some results, this is already discovery of something. So you put them in the paper and then submit to the scientific journal. And when the journal publishes your article, I would say every article in a way is a discovery because you're always digging something new and you're always trying to discover something. That's why, yes, our job is like discover every single day. We discover something.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. But I guess, so the brown dwarves, that's something that you're sort of the most excited about right now. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we are trying to study the evolution. We are trying to find those close to the sun objects because we are surrounded by flying stars. In the proximity of sun, there's always objects flying by here and there. And those objects are relatively close to us. We are trying to see. And also, there's another aspect of this. I mean, the cold stars, like the temperature of a bit colder than our sun, with the temperature about 3,000-4,000 Kelvin. Our sun is hotter. So we are trying to find now the planets around those stars, and there are tons of planets now. We know thousands of planets around nearby stars. We're using special spectrographs instruments to find them. And yes, this is kind of cutting edge of astronomy now. We are trying to find the planets, and the next step, because statistically now we know there are so many planets out there. Now the next step would be to characterize them and to find the planets which are within this, what we call habitable zone.
Right.
So which means there is a probability of finding life on those planets. And this is like what we are doing now. We are trying to find those planets and see, potentially hoping finding life in one of those planets in space. That's the next step.
I mean, that's the dream, right?
Well, yeah, that's kind of becoming a reality. So we know the planets. I mean, even like 30 years ago, there was a discussion about the exoplanets, but now we know they're real. We can just find them, we see them, we can take some measurements, and hoping to find some life.
Is that something that, getting back to that question about like when you were a kid and you looked up at the sky, I mean, is the idea of being one of the scientists who is sort of trying to find that, like, is that something when you were a kid you thought, God, what an amazing, like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, did you sort of evolve from being a kid and now here you are being one of these people that can actually do this?
I think so, yeah, because when we were kids, we were dreaming about, these big discoveries and traveling in space and time and so on. Our science fiction was everywhere. And now I'm kind of reached the level where I'm into this process. And I'm one of those people whom I wanted to become being a child, a big kid. Yes, it's extremely satisfactory feeling, like, you're achieving what you wanted like a long time ago. And you
right.
feel like you're part of this community, scientific community, who just, studying the universe every single night.
Yeah. So I know that I've read some things that seems that the scientific community is somewhat like divided on this, and I don't know how true this is, and I'm probably paraphrasing a bit here, but the idea of, it seems that there are many scientists that believe that there is just nothing out there, because if there was, we would have found it already. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but it seems to be something that I've heard before. Where do you kind of sit on that idea? I mean, do you think that it's just a matter of time, or I don't know what?
I think it's a matter of time. We are definitely, the bigger question is whether we are alone in space or not. And I strongly believe we are not alone. So statistically, there should be planets. We know already actually there are planets like our Earth. It's out there. So this, in terms of like physical conditions, we know there are planets. So if you think like a scientist, we should not see any reasons why there is no life over there. So why we are not unique in space. In terms of, everything chemistry, we are totally not unique in conditions. Mm-hmm. So I believe there are maybe there are other forms of life, not necessarily like us, but some kind of life form out there. It should be there. The problem is technologically we are not probably advanced yet enough to find signs of life on other planets. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of time. Either they will find us, maybe they already found us. That's the thing, because
right.
If you think about this, if those civilizations, they're much more advanced than us. For them, we are like a kids, maybe like insects.
Ants.
No,
yeah.
Way. Yeah, maybe like ants. So they just don't take us seriously. So this is why maybe they're looking at us right now, just say whatever, just another low form of life.
Right.
So that's the thing. So the reason why we don't see them right now, it doesn't mean much, because it means like it can be anything. It's just maybe they are looking at us, they're invisible for us due to like the technological advances, or they just once they were here, they checked us and flew away. Tons of reasons, but I believe we are not alone.
Yeah. Well, that's cool to hear you say. I like that. I like
many astronomers think in this way. We are not unique in this universe.
Yeah, that's very cool, man. What was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, everyone I think is always dreaming of that. I don't know that there could be a more epic, day or news report of hey, it's official, we found something. I mean, and maybe it's different now in 2020 because people are kind of weirder now or something. But like ever since I was a kid, I always thought that's the biggest thing in the world is to make that discovery.
Well, many people still believe in Men in Black. Like there is a secret society here. Maybe,
Right.
maybe we've been already contacted by aliens, and they're already here. We just don't know about it. I don't know. Again, I have no idea about this. I'm a scientist.
Right. Isn't also one of the difficulties with this is not even necessarily where, but when, because in fact, if I can, peer into another galaxy, and obviously what I am seeing is potentially that galaxy as it existed maybe hundreds of millions of years ago, right?
Yes.
Then it seems to me that it's difficult to know. Obviously you have the difficulty of the vastness of space and where would they be, but also like the question, when would they be? Did they exist a billion years ago and that's that they existed a billion years ago and that was it, or will they not exist for maybe another billion years? And I think that's the thought that really overwhelms me when I think about that kind of thing.
Well, that's very true because in classical physics, yes, when you look at the light, the speed of light, it's constant number and it's not infinite, it's not instant. So the light travels at the velocity about 300,000 kilometers per second. The thing is, yes, everything we see in the sky, it's basically the past. It's not like a real in a way. Even the sun, take the sun, the distance from Earth to sun is 8 light minutes. So what it means, if sun suddenly explodes, we will see it only in 8 minutes. So the closest star to us, it's like a years away now. So if something happens to Alpha Centauri, one of the closest stars to us, we will see the consequence of this explosion a few years after. And what about the other galaxies? Yeah, it's in millions and billions of years. So yeah, that's what basically what we see in the past. Well, there are lots of theories now about tunnels in space and time. So when other civilizations can travel through space,
like wormholes.
Like a wormholes, yeah, it's a huge thing. So we don't know yet. Again, it's not proven yet, but why not? If we are so advanced technologically, maybe we came to understanding how to do time travel and space travel, so people can come to us from past and future. It's very complicated thing. It's more like a science fiction now, but since we don't know, we cannot prove it yet. So we are where we are.
Right.
We just have to believe. We have to believe that we are not alone, and hopefully we will be contacted by somebody. But the thing is, there is another interesting question. Many people, when they say "Oh, it would be so cool to see aliens or other civilizations contacting us," but the thing is, it might not necessarily be the good thing, because for them, you might be just part of the food chain. They could just, especially if they are much more technologically advanced. We are not going to have Bruce Willis next time, to save us. Yeah, it's going to be. It's a very philosophical question. So what happens if they contact us? Whether it will be good for us or not? We assume it's going to be good for us, but it's not obvious. It's not necessarily going to be going this way.
Yeah. Do you have some of your colleagues at the observatory? Do you find that some people are kind of more into the idea of extraterrestrials and aliens, and maybe there's other people that are just sort of I don't have time for that, and I would imagine there's different types of people that are astronomers just like any other occupation.
There are various people, and many scientists to whom I'm talking, they say we don't see any reason why not, why there is no other forms of life in the universe. So most of people assume yes, there is life. We just haven't seen it yet, but we believe that it's somewhere there. And again, as a scientist, we don't really work with beliefs. We work with data and the facts. Before we can prove something, we cannot say it for sure whether it's real or not. So this is how science works. So that's why I can just, as a person, I can say, oh, I can fantasize about these wormholes and other things and civilizations, but until we see some kind of proof, so we can't really be certain about it. So
Right.
in science, we need some evidences.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. But I'm sure like you and maybe other people, they have hope, right? I mean, it's one thing to have maybe an opinion on something that may or not even exist, right? But there must be times when you hope, like the little kid Yuri Beletsky walking around looking at the stars. Like, you must hope that things exist.
Of course, yes. We always hope like there will be contact and it will be good for us. There will be like a nice aliens, we can exchange information.
Right.
But
have a
on
barbecue.
the other hand, have a couple of beers.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, just looking that we're still in our planet, we cannot make the things right yet. And we are just all human beings. At the moment, we can't really even just, make peace between ourselves. It's so like difficult to think about, aliens now.
Yeah.
But I think it's a matter of time. Look at the history of human civilizations. We're always we're improving. We are learning things. We're kind of evolving as well. And I believe if we don't kill ourselves, we'll get to the
It's so true. I mean, just the fact that we can sit here and say, probably before the end of like my lifetime, we will probably get to Mars, and not just a little fledgling experiment, but most likely there will be people on Mars for some sort of longer period of time. I mean, especially if Elon Musk has anything, to do with it. It seems that he is just the type of personality and the type of mind that like refuses to give up on that as an objective. And that's just crazy to think that we're in a world in which this will probably take place in like the next, couple of decades or something.
I think so. Yeah. I think technically, technologically, we are not quite there yet, probably, but we are getting there. And I believe like in the nearest future, it will become a reality. Yeah. It's no question about this. So I don't see any problems. I mean, I think if Musk is a genius in a way, like he's a very smart guy. I mean, he knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. He's a brilliant manager in a way. He just organized. It's because that's the thing. It's not enough just to have money. You have to organize your business properly. You have to be like, mastermind of a project. And he's a good thing in this case. Yeah, his Mars project is pretty interesting. And also, it's kind of, that was the beginning of our conversation. It's all about ignition. You spark, maybe race. There's another billionaire like, oh, I want to do the same. I do the same. So there will be healthy competition in a way, just which again will propel us to the next level. That's the competition is always a good thing. So it's always give us something. Just you want to just jump to the next level, so on.
Yeah, that's true. That's another thing that is maybe the only thing that could be even more exciting or weird than the idea that we're actually, at the precipice of being able to go to Mars, is the fact that it's like a corporate, it's like a profitable industry between SpaceX and what's the other what is it called?
Blue
Sierra. What's the name of it? Sierra.
There's Amazon project, is Blue Origin. Yeah.
Blue Origin. Yep. And so you have multiple companies kind of vying for space as like travel, I guess, right? And is that fair to define it as essentially turning it into like taking a trip on a plane for people that don't mind potentially spending millions of dollars to do it?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's business is essential part. It's not just about trying to explore the space. People want to make money out of this. I mean, his interest also is business as well, of course. I mean, the first you are in the space, I mean, you can earn tons of money, that's for sure. But also the same time, it just kind of, it's a side, it's a byproduct. Once even if you're trying to make more money, you still need to develop technology to get there. So this is why it's healthy. It contributes to science, it contributes to everything around us. For example, take like the horrible thing, like, the Cold War between like the Soviet Union and the United States. But that during the Cold War, those two biggest enemies, it was a huge moment for science, because
Right.
from both sides, scientists were working on, of course, they were working on for military, but at the same time, we got so many discoveries, so many technologies, new technologies came to our world because of this competition, this military competition. Luckily, it never happened, like the war never happened, but we got as a byproduct just enormous boost in science on both sides, and the whole science just benefited a lot from that. So again, it's a bad thing to think about a war. But
Yeah.
purely scientifically, yeah, we got good results.
Yeah, there's a quote that I keep going over and over recently, which is only at the precipice do we evolve. And I think that very much kind of describes what you're talking about, is this idea that when your back is sort of against the wall, whether it is or you feel like it is, that seems to be when the most like ingenuity is taking place, and even with the quarantine right now, for example, like I know that this is one of these situations where these like $1 billion ideas are going to be birthed from, because there are going to be a lot of people that are sitting around and they're bored and they're just thinking, and they're able to think much more maybe efficiently than they would have been otherwise, because they don't have maybe what they, their 9 to 5 or whatever their daily grind might be. And I'm just sort of sitting around and I'm like waiting for some of these big moments to happen, these big aha moments that I know are going to come from something like this. I keep hoping that it'll happen to me. Like I keep telling my wife, like one of these mornings I'm going to wake up and I'm going to go, aha, and I'm going to have my eureka moment and, invent some thing. Hasn't happened for me yet though.
Well, it's coming, I think. It's coming. Nobody knows for how long we're going to be in this. The thing is, with this virus, life has changed. The world has changed. It's not going to be the same, like, I wouldn't say like ever, but it definitely has changed for quite a bit, for quite a while. For years to come. The way we live, the way we communicate, the way we do business, everything has changed. And we need just to start to learn in the new reality, whether we want it or not. That's the thing. That's we're going to change anyway until, I don't know, at least the vaccine will be found or a new cure will be found. We don't know. But we just have to adapt. That's evolution as well. So we just have to adapt our lifestyles now and try to get the best out of the situation.
Yeah. And, I think even once there is a vaccine, I still think that there will be people will change in terms of like behaviorally, because I was talking to my friend who I also had on the podcast. It's a therapist who was saying, obviously depends on many factors here, but it's roughly 30 days is what it takes for a person to sort of develop into this new normal based on whatever circumstances go. Okay, this is how life is. I'm just going to sort of move forward. And I think we're kind of in that phase now where it's the idea of the quarantine and the idea of the coronavirus is sort of less like interesting to people right now, because it's not just that like fun snowstorm where people get to, take a couple of days off of school anymore. Like it's just life. It just is what it is now. And so, like on that note, I wonder if after so many months or potentially even like a year or more of not flying and not going to concerts and not going to restaurants and places where there are lots of people, if governments start saying, okay, guys, I think we're good now. You can feel free to go to concerts. You can feel free to go to travel and get on a plane. You can go to restaurants. I wonder how many people will have just sort of developed that new normal and developed that anxiety about these things and will basically say, I don't know if I really want to get on a plane, or I don't know if I want to go to that concert. It just maybe doesn't seem like a very good idea. And I think that's going to make a dramatic effect on businesses and places, because people will make that choice now.
Well, for sure. And especially when we're talking about photography, right? So many photographers, nightscape photographers as well, landscape photographers, they make their living out of conducting workshops around the world or even in their vicinities. So now, I mean, we don't even know. I mean, now all workshops around the world, basically pretty much all of them, they have been canceled now. People are not traveling anymore. I mean, maybe you can find clients who just in your closest vicinity, maybe if you're lucky and you're not in quarantine mode. But generally speaking, like in the upcoming month or maybe years, we will see like significant reshaping of the whole photographical segment, like a photographical business segment, because we don't know how it's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're used to travel around the world, teaching people how to do photography, how are you going to be traveling now? It's not now about you. Maybe you are willing to travel, but what about the clients? Those people will be simply afraid of going somewhere. That's the thing. So, and lots of people, they're totally rethinking their lifestyle, not in a way like how to live, but how to survive and make living.
Yeah.
Because something which was working for you, like even like a month ago, suddenly it's like, everything is collapsing. That's a huge problem now in photography community. I have lots of friends who make living conducting like workshops, and for them it's a huge hit, like a hard hit. Like they really, it's a problem now. Yeah.
Yeah, and for yourself, I would imagine. I mean, I'm sure it's not an easy. Obviously you have your career as an astronomer, but I would still imagine that will affect you pretty significantly as well.
Well, it's already affecting in a way like we are not working now. We're at homes and we are just waiting for the opening, and let's see how it's going. But for example, when it comes to taking pictures now, and especially to teaching, I still can travel, of course, for when everything opens. I mean, I still can travel, take pictures, but when it comes now to teaching photography, that will be, I think, more complicated now. Mm-hmm. And it's not about you personally. It can be it's more about people who will be willing to join you. That's
exactly.
That's unknown. Yeah.
Yeah. What is it like in Chile right now? By the way, how is the country sort of reacting?
I'm in Chile. Surprisingly, I think it's going pretty well so far. Okay, from my personal point of view, we don't have large numbers of people who died or contaminated now with virus. So of course it's always going up a little bit, but not as fast as it like in Europe or in the United States. We are trying to. We don't have full quarantine anymore. We used to have it like in the place in Santiago, in the district where I live. So we had it like for a couple of weeks. Now we have quarantine in Chile. It's very few places. People can freely move in the country, but of course social distancing is a must.
Right.
Now we live in new reality. We always, once you're outside, you must have a mask. I mean, without a mask, you're not allowed to go, basically. I mean, there'll be big fines if you're caught without a mask.
Really?
So, yeah. So it's a must for us. Every single person on the street has a mask now, which was kind of unthinkable even a few weeks ago.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So something for me, for example, when I used to travel a lot to Asia, and I like to go to China, to Hong Kong. I mean, in those countries, when I see so many people with masks, I was thinking like, wow, that's probably excessive. Like nothing is happening. But now, like we're living in this reality where we have to do it, and it's not just about for your safety, just for everybody. Just you're closing your face with the mask, and just even if you get virus, you're not spreading it as fast as you could do it just without a mask. So, and people understand. I would say I was very surprised. I mean, that Latin American mentality, people are very expressive, explosive. There's just sometimes you get a feeling like you're living in a chaos. Mm-hmm. But in a way, Chile has been doing pretty good from my point of view. I think it is.
It's funny, I suppose, the difference between a place like Chile and the U.S. and that, like to your point, you haven't had that many diagnosed cases and that many deaths by comparison to the U.S. And yet in the U.S., there are still debates over whether or not is this necessary? Is it an overreaction? Is it not enough? And there's still no real mandate for masks. I mean, I think there are in some places, but like, and make no mistake, I see most people wearing masks. It is for sure become this cultural thing. But I mean, like I'll still see people without masks outside, and I don't get the impression that there's any sort of like legal repercussion for doing that. I think in the U.S., what it's become is it's almost like this shaming thing where it's like if someone feels as though maybe someone else is not like acting accordingly, if someone isn't like taking the precautions that maybe they should be. It's not so much that they'll get arrested or something. It's more like everyone will kind of shame them on the internet and say like how irresponsible they were. But it doesn't become like a mandatory thing.
Yeah, it's mandatory whether you like it or not. So you have to do it. That's like a bottom line. The government just put their foot down and say everybody does it. That's it. I mean, full stop, no discussion. This is like our reality. So you can always say like, oh, I don't want to do it, but there will be consequences. I mean, It doesn't mean like, you'll be caught immediately, but yeah, first of all, people will be telling you, and then finally police will come to you and just probably give you at least a warning first. And then if it happens again, you'll be fine.
Yeah. So you're obviously taking it more seriously than we are. A friend of mine, Stevie Khan, who's a photographer in Dubai. Now this was at least 2, if not 3 weeks ago that I spoke with him. And he said, at least at that time, that you actually couldn't even leave your house unless you had like a paper, like a certificate of some kind, which is really bizarre, to think about. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong one way or the other. But it is an eerie thing to think about, like this idea of living in this world in which you essentially have to have a piece of paper in order to be able to leave your house. It's just amazing that it's come to that.
Oh, we had the same here in Chile as well. I was in my house and we were not, on the full quarantine, which ended just a few days ago. So before we lived almost like more than 2 weeks on the full quarantine where you were not even allowed to leave the house unless you go for like a grocery shopping. But even for that, you must have a paper. So luckily in Chile, it's kind of, it was done online. So you could apply like online on the internet, just register yourself, just get a paper online. But you still need this paper, or like on your cell phone, you need like to have like official permission from police.
Right.
Yes, we were in this phase for a few weeks. So you really couldn't even go outside of your home.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So were people a little, that must have been a source of anxiety to this idea of, but I'm almost out of food and now I have to get this, right? I would think that would have been a little bit of a scary thing.
Well, again, I think people took it, of course, I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm saying like most of the people understood it. For example, when you go to grocery shopping now, it was always like it was stated, not the whole family is going, just one person per family goes into grocery shopping with this permission. And but again, it was kind of essential thing to do, and most of the people complied. Well, plus still in Chile, even right now, we have curfew hours. Essentially night from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
We are not allowed to be on the streets. So it's still there everywhere in the whole country. So after 10 p.m., you're not allowed to be on the streets. It's like that's how it works.
Yeah.
So this is why at night we just stay at home. So I cannot go even outside now to take pictures. Although, like for example, the weather was beautiful, I couldn't go to anywhere because we are not allowed. So 10 p.m. That's it.
Man,
so,
yeah. I'm like I said before, I'm fortunate enough to have. We came up to Maine about a week ago, and it was like. It's pretty clear now. Have you ever photographed in Maine before?
No, actually, I've never been there.
Okay. It's
yeah.
You should come up sometime. Hey, it's not the Atacama. I'm not going to try to say that it can hold a candle to some of the places that you've obviously taken photos from. But in terms of like the landscape aspect of night photography. It is a very unique place because we have all these lighthouses and like when the tide is low, you get all the, the rocks and it's a very, I don't know, it's a very kind of sleepy, surreal, interesting environment. And I really love to shoot here. There are some difficulties with it. There's like this, I don't know, it's like maybe the first 5 to 10 degrees on the horizon, if you're on the coast, always has this like sort of like this brackish salty air kind of thing. And so what a lot of times what tends to happen is early in the season, like now, if you want to shoot the Milky Way right on the horizon, like last night I was setting up a shot to where I had there was like this house on this little island and it was maybe a half a mile away, and I tried to shoot it with a long lens so that I could get the really kind of imposing Milky Way like right behind it. And I managed to get a decent one last night, but for the most part, if you try to shoot it just on the horizon like that, it's very, very difficult because you get half of it and the other half is just obscured by this
That's
haze.
true. Yeah. Well, that's one of the advantages of why you should go to a desert, whether it's like Mojave Desert, Atacama Desert. Yeah, and not just a desert. You should go a little bit higher, like a few thousand feet, which it helps a lot, to clear the air. The transparency is absolutely amazing. So you're getting like an absolutely clear sky, and it's not just clear. The transparency is beautiful. Like you can get the best shots in your life. Like in 30-second exposure time, the whole sky is shining. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
So it's not just about the humidity, it's also about the aerosols or dust in the air. So the higher you get, the more clean the air. So, and plus the mountains, the views, of course, are striking to me.
Yeah, that's very cool. I've really never had the opportunity to. I've seen some dark skies, but I don't think I've ever seen that like what you're in. It must be like a Bortle 1, correct? Is where you.
Yeah, it's pretty much. I mean, all professional observers, we have to be in the very dark places. They're scientifically measured, those sites. Before, like professional astronomers build an observatory, there is usually a campaign which is called astrocrimatology study of the place. So which means like a team of astronomers and engineers, they physically travel to the mountains, they set up specific equipment like a small telescopes, they start to measure quality of the sky in this given place. And this process takes like a month and years. So they study carefully all conditions like a temperature, wind flow, cloud coverage, humidity, like transparency, everything is being measured. And then after a few years, there is a report going into the administration, and they take a decision whether this site is good for professional observatory. Because every observatory is like a huge investment. It's millions of dollars you have to invest and build telescopes, infrastructure like roads and supply chain and all this stuff. So you have to be pretty confident where you're building the observatory.
Right. Yeah. So it's definitely, I think this is probably obvious already, but it's safe to say that your observatory is in one of the best places on Earth to look at the night sky.
Absolutely, yes.
That's very cool. Have you ever been to one that you like more? I mean, do you have like a favorite place that you've ever shot from, or is it right where you do your work?
Honestly, I don't have a favorite place, just one place. I have many places. Like Hawaii is an amazing place. I love Canary Islands too. I like Atacama Desert as well. So it's like every place is different. So there's not like nothing which is like better than the other. For me, Atacama Desert is closer because I essentially live here, I work here, and I love it because of the southern sky as well. Atacama, probably I would say Atacama Desert is my favorite place.
Right. What do you suppose might be better, if like Antarctica maybe, or would you say no, probably Atacama may actually be the best place?
Antarctica is a good place too. Antarctica, there are certain places in Antarctica where there are telescopes. I mean, there's scientific bases where they conduct experiments like observatories, but the conditions are pretty harsh in Antarctica. Temperature is extremely low. It's very difficult to do astronomy there. It's almost like a space station in a way. Mm-hmm. So this is why, like, in terms of easiness, in terms of conditions, we are pretty similar. Maybe like like image quality in Antarctica, sometimes they get better, or in terms of humidity, also it's pretty low. But I mean, Atacama Desert is quite comparable, I would say, in those places.
Man, I would love to come and shoot there sometime.
You should come sometime for sure.
Oh man,
it's just amazing. And again, why Atacama? Many people ask me like, okay, so why should I go to Chile or let's say Argentina or in the South America? Why I should go there while we have in like a Utah, Arizona, Colorado, we have amazing sky, like a beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm saying now I'm speaking as an astronomer, saying the one reason why you should go is the visibility of the Milky Way. Because even in Arizona, you see this galactic center area, which is the galactic core, beautiful. It just, it's going up horizon like a few tens of degrees. But in the Atacama Desert, the whole Milky Way is just at zenith. So when you look at the sky, you put your head like this, and you see the whole arc of the Milky Way just above you. It's just a view, and you see the Magellanic Clouds, you see the Southern Cross, these beautiful things which you'll never see it from the north. So that's another reason. So it's not just about clearness and cloudless or just being in the desert. It's just being in different sides of the planet. And you will see totally different parts of the Milky Way. And the Milky Way in the south, I'm telling you now as a photographer. So the southern Milky Way is much more spectacular than the Milky Way in the north. It's just more, it's a brighter, it has more beautiful configurations, like, there's a Southern Cross, a coal sack, name, all beautiful. So being in the south, as a photographer, again, is beneficial. If you look, for example, in images from like Australia, New Zealand, especially, when you see—
I was just going to say, yeah.
Amazing, like a Milky Way plus, they see aurora, these shines of this northern lights, or in this case, they'll be like southern lights. It's completely different sky. So this is why people sometimes forget about this. It's different sky. It's not about a clear sky. It's different sky, different universe.
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying if you have a chance, just go to the southern hemisphere. Just, I said, it's either Chile or Australia or South Africa. You'll be amazed with what you see.
Yeah. I have seen the Milky Way from Southern Africa before, but it was during a time when I was not yet a photographer. So it's like, I have to get back there. Yeah. It kind of doesn't count. You're right. So, because I would appreciate it much more now. But, yeah, I've heard some of other photographers that I know, not in Chile, because you're the only one that I know, but in like New Zealand, say that they can see the colors from Rho. And how do you, maybe you can definitively answer this question. Mm-hmm. How exactly do you say that word? Is it Rho Ophiuchi?
Yeah, it's Rho Ophiuchi.
Ophiuchi. Okay. Yeah. I've like seen people's different pronunciation. I have no idea how to say this word. Yeah. Like it seems as though people in the Southern hemisphere claim that the colors of Rho Ophiuchi are like much better somehow. Like the pinks and the blues are somehow better down there.
No.
You don't think that's true?
I think it's kind of it's a stretch. Well, the thing is, we are talking now about the deep sky object. I mean, the colors of the deep sky object, they're pretty well defined. It's just a physics. So we know how they should be. We know how, from which elements the color emerges. In terms of bringing more blue, no, it's all about image processing. You can make it as blue as you want. The only thing is why they might have a point. It's just transparency of the atmosphere. For example, mm-hmm. Rho Ophiuchi, the whole constellation is Ophiuchi. It's more like a southern constellation, which, like, even in places like in Maine, for example, if you try to take a picture, this object will be relatively close to horizon. So what it means, you will get lots of extinction on the line of sight. So your object, your brightness of the object will be much lower than, for example, in New Zealand or in Atacama Desert, when we can see this object just at zenith.
I see what you're saying. Yep.
This is the only reason. So that's why people say, oh, we can get it better. Yes, of course they can, because when you observe something in zenith, you're essentially like your atmosphere doesn't play much of a role. While if you're trying to catch it close to horizon, it's like you see your haze over the ocean, because the light is getting absorbed. And that's why your object will be much dimmer. That's the only reason. Otherwise, color-wise, you can get any colors.
Right. That makes sense. And I suppose it must be the reason why you see a lot more like Milky Way panoramas shots maybe in the Southern hemispheres, because I guess it just tends to work better with those, cool aspects of the night sky. It's easier to wrap them around in a photo when they're higher up.
Exactly. Another reason why it's more like a scenic, I would say. Speaking like as an artist, it's more scenic, because in the Southern hemisphere, you can see the Milky Way in the configuration where the bulge, what we call the bulge of the galaxy. Our galaxy is like, the disk, rotating disk. And the brightest part of it, close to the center, we call it bulge. This is where our galactic center is, just in the middle of the Milky Way. There's a galactic center. We don't see it. So this brightest part bulge, it's, if you take a picture from the southern hemisphere, you will see configuration when the bulge will be like literally in the center of your panorama, and then you will see like a beautiful, wings of the Milky Way on both sides. Mm-hmm. So now, if you go into the northern hemisphere, this bulge will be shifted significantly to one side, to the south. So which means you will never get this bulge in the picture in the center, like a beautiful arc with a brilliant, like a diamond thing.
Right.
And this is, again, it's all about visibility. So if you want to get perfect picture of the Milky Way with a beautiful bulge and just completely symmetric Milky Way, you must go to the south. You cannot get it from the northern hemisphere. So, and This is the reason why people like it, because, of this visual aspect of the Milky Way.
Right. That makes sense. Well, I'll book my flight as soon as
Well, as soon as they open, like,
yeah, yeah. I hope it clears up soon because in fact, actually, we mentioned Africa earlier. I am trying to get back to Africa. It's kind of been on my list for a while. Do you suppose is Namibia? Would you say a pretty solid spot?
Namibia is one of the best places. I mean, Namibia seriously is one of the best places. Plus, it's quite developed in a way. Just it's pretty safe country. And yeah, it's. I have lots of friends who go to Namibia to take pictures, like astronomers who take like both deep sky pictures and like nightscapes. Yeah, Namibia is one of the best. I've never been there actually, surprisingly, because I spend most of the time here. But yeah, Namibia is it's pretty amazing place. Yeah.
It's one of the only places in Southern Africa that I haven't been to, and yet, ironically, it's the best place in Southern Africa to shoot. And even really probably landscapes as well. Just that the different color sands in the desert and the dead trees and all that. It's a very cool, cool country. But Namibia is on my list because I really like to go on safari and I really like to appreciate wildlife and that sort of thing. And Namibia is interesting because you've got the night sky aspect, you've got the landscape aspect, and then if you just drive to the northeast, you've got Etosha National Park, and so then you can still kind of get all of the wildlife stuff that you could get in maybe South Africa or Zambia or Kenya, Tanzania, those places. So maybe that's maybe I'm you may have just put that extra little bit of weight for Namibia on the scale for me, and that may be the next place that I go.
Well, I can tell you one, 20 years ago when Europeans, or even more than 30 years ago now, Europeans were looking for a place to put a VLT, very large telescope. Namibia was one of the places where they were thinking of putting a telescope, so which means this place was thoroughly studied by astronomers, and it was proven to be an excellent place for astronomy. So no surprises, like if you go to take a picture of night sky, there's plenty of amount of clear nights, the weather is very good. So yeah, it's scientifically speaking, it's a very good place for nightscape pictures. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to consider Namibia then, especially because I can do everything there as well. That'll be cool.
I can tell you one advantage for Americans, why Chile is so attractive for Americans, because Chile, we are in the same, like you see now, we're in the same time zone. So when you fly to Chile, you're in the same time zone. You don't have a jet lag, and this is super important. For example, when you fly to Namibia or when you fly to Australia, jet lag is not a joke. For many people, it's very hard to switch, from your normal time to another time zone. And typically, when you come to another country, it might take a few days just to switch, and then you won't be as productive as you want.
Yeah.
And while if you fly to Chile and go to Atacama Desert, you change nothing. You just fly to the same time zone and you can start shooting night sky just right away. It's so much easier. That's why many of my American friends who are coming here, they love Chile because it's so much easier for them. They don't need to shift.
Yeah, that's a great point because I totally agree with you. I'm always having this conversation with my friends about, because I'm always trying to convince people to travel with me. And one of the biggest objections always seems to be this idea of I'm going to be completely useless for the first 2 days that I'm there, and I'm going to be completely useless for the 2 days, once I get back. And I've probably I've traveled enough to where I think I'm okay with it. I think maybe some people can just sort of deal with it, and it's not that bad. But certainly, it's still not going to be as good as if there just wasn't any jet lag. But yeah, it's I think it's a big hurdle for a lot of people. Is I don't want to feel the misery of my circadian rhythm being all screwed up. Are you still there, Yuri?
The connection is getting really bad now, I think.
Is it? I can still hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's coming back. There was a short period of time that I lost everything. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just basically saying how I think people's biggest objection with travel tends to be the jet lag. It's just a shitty feeling.
Yeah, it's true. Again, I mean, especially when you're working for your own project, you should take this into account when you go to another country. And when, for me, one of the most difficult thing is to go to Australia, for instance. We have like almost like 14 hours difference now.
Right.
And it's crushing, like, you know, but it's very hard. But in a
Yeah.
way, like, of course, it's exciting. But if you want to be 100% fit and feeling good, yeah, it will take a while.
Yeah. It's a great point. And I mean, hey, I love South American food as well. So, you know, you get that when you go to Chile as well.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah, definitely, yes. So you will just, as I said, just jump in the plane. And luckily, I can tell you why Chile is also attractive now, because over the years, I mean, I see just developing the trend. So far, the prices has been significantly going down lower and lower. So you could fly like this year, flight from any US city, let's say big city to Santiago de Chile was less than $1,000 US. So it was pretty, you know,
That's good.
It's even less. Sometimes it was going down to like a $500, like New York, Santiago, $500. You can do it. So
Yeah.
it's, well, I don't know how it's going to change now.
Right.
Reality.
Yeah. Now it's like, you know, $17, you know?
Wow. I mean, when the price of oil is negative, yeah.
Right. I saw that today. God, it's so amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Yuri, sincerely, thank you for doing this with me. I really, really appreciate it. Frankly, I was surprised that you would do it, because I'm not, you know, a big voice in the community by any stretch. But I am somebody who's very curious about this kind of stuff, and it was really an honor having you on, man. So really, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, because I'm saying, like, for me, it doesn't really matter. I don't consider myself as a star or a superstar or whatever. Just, you know, I'm just a normal person. So that's why if there's a chance, I'm always happy to share my knowledge, my experience. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, thank you. And I disagree. I think you are a star.
I'm not.
All right, man. Well, I'll talk to you soon. And yeah, thank you again.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.